Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new Mobalytics TFT video diving into set 3. We're going to go over all of the classes and origins in the set, what they do, and which champions are in each. We have all of this and more on our website, by the way, including a full list of champions, their abilities, a few comps, items, everything you need to know about the new set. We've got full champion pages, so if you want to know about Echo, for example, our new 5 cost in this set that is a cybernetic and an infiltrator, you can go onto his page and see that his ability is freezing all units in time before attacking each of them for a bit of magic damage and also applying on-hit effects. There is a link down below to check out all of that information and go and look at the champions as well. But for now, let's look at our first trait, which are going to be our Celestials. There are 6 Celestials in the game. We have Xayah, Rakan, Xin Zhao, Kassadin, Ashe, and then finally Lulu as our 5 cost. This trait is going to mean that all allies heal for 12%, going up to 30%, and then finally up to 55% of the damage that they deal. The 6th version of this probably isn't going to be that great, but definitely the 4 version will be really good. And actually the cool thing is you can get this active really early into the game. Xayah is 1 cost, Rakan is 2, Xin Zhao is 2 as well, but Rakan and also Xin Zhao are both protectors, which basically gives them a shield every time they cast, so you can get 2 Celestial and 2 Protector very early from just 2 units. Next up, we have our Chrono trait. So all allies gain 10%, 20%, or 40% attack speed every 4 seconds. This is a little bit like a Ranger buff combined with our Luna buff. It's kind of the new version of Luna in our set 3. We're going to have Twisted Fate and Caitlyn as our 1 cost units in here, Shen and Blitzcrank as our 2 cost, Ezreal as a 3 cost, Wukong 4, and then finally Thresh as 5. One of the cool things about this is that it is attack speed for everybody, but it's very easy to slot into a bunch of different comps. We have a Sorcerer in here with Twisted Fate, we have a Sniper, Blade Master, Brawler, Blaster, Vanguard, and even a Mana-Reaver. In theory, it lets you combine them pretty easily. So you could have like 3 Blade Masters with the Shen, and then you could have 4 Brawlers with the Blitzcrank as well, and you'd be getting the Chrono buff for all of those Blade Masters and all of those Brawlers. Next up, we have our Cybernetics. So Cybernetics with an item gain 30 AD and 300 health at the first one, which is 3, and then 75 AD and 750 health, which is a 6. Leona and Fiora are our 1 cost Cybernetics. We have Lucian as our 2 cost, Vi is our 3 cost, Irelia is a 4 cost, and Echo is our 5 cost. It basically just buffs any item that you put on a cybernetic, but the problem with this, or the one downside to this, is you really want to split your items across all of them rather than just stack it on one champion. It doesn't really give as much of a boost. It's much better if you have like 1 item on all 6. Next up, we have one of the coolest ones, which are our Darkstar. So when a Darkstar dies, it gives plus 30% or 50% increased damage, plus previous stacks of this effect as well to the nearest allied Darkstar. Our Darkstars are going to be Jarvan as a 1 cost, Mordekaiser as a 2 cost. We have a lot of 3 costs with these actually, with Lux, Karma, and Shaco, and then finally Jin is our 4 cost. It's kind of a little bit like we have Lights now, so it stacks up as someone dies. It doesn't give the attack speed, but it gives the increased damage instead. One of the most obvious uses for this is going to be Jarvan and Mordekaiser as a front. They are frontline units, so they die. They pass the stacking buff onto something like Shaco or Jin, which are damage units, and suddenly they're going to do way more damage, especially for only having 3. Like that 3 active is going to be really good. Next up, we have probably one of the most controversial parts of this set, or at least I think it probably will be, which are our Space Pirates. Cool name and pretty much lives up to the pirate name. You have a 50% chance to drop 1 gold if you have 2 of them, and a 10% chance to drop an item if you have 4 of them whenever a Space Pirate lands a killing blow. The Space Pirates themselves are not going to be that amazing. We have a 1 cost Graves, 2 cost Darius, 3 cost Jace, and then a 5 cost Gangplank. Thankfully, you cannot get the 10% chance to drop an item until quite late into the game, at which point you're probably going to suffer some health loss if you stick all of these into your comp and you can't build like a proper one around it. There also isn't really an easy way to fit those 4 into a comp. Graves is a Blaster, Darius is a Mana-Reaver, Jace is a Vanguard, and then Gangplank is a Mercenary and a Demolitionist. So there's no way you can actually put them in together to make it easier. Next up is one of the most fun traits of this entire set. We have our mech-pilot. So at the start of combat, 3 random mech-pilot champions are merged into a super mech until it dies. We have our 2 cost Annie as a mech-pilot, we have our 3 cost Rumble, and finally our 4 cost Fizz. So it's not too hard to assemble, but definitely can't do it too early. You're probably going to see this quite a lot, but the way it works at the moment is they combine together, they can hold some items as well while in the super mech, and then once it's destroyed, the champions pop out again. So it'll probably be really, really strong mid-game, but maybe not as good late game. So next up we have Rebels. At the start of combat, Rebels gain 125 or 200 health shield for 8 seconds and then 10% or 15% increased damage for each adjacent Rebel. Our Rebels are going to be Ziggs and Malphite as a 1 cost, Yasuo and Sona as a 2 cost, Master Yi as a 3 cost, Jinx as a 4, and then finally a Radiant Soul as a 5 cost. This is sort of like Mountain buff in set 2, even though it's not random. So it's the same kind of idea, but obviously not going to be as good. But if you put together Ziggs, Malphite, and then a 2 cost like Yasuo or Sona, you can get that shield very early into the game. The good thing as well is that all of those Rebels are going to get the shield and not just one of them, and they're going to deal bonus damage if you stick them together. So it should be pretty easy to use it, and you can maybe use it early just for like a bit of a boost while you transition into something else. We have a couple more origins before we move into our classes. The next up is going to be our Star Guardian. So whenever a Star Guardian casts, it distributes 10 or 20 mana among all other Star Guardians. These are going to be Poppy and Zoe as our 1 cost, Ahri is going to be our 2 cost, Nico and Syndra will be our 3 cost, and Soraka will be our 4 cost. Our Zoe, our Ahri, and our Syndra are all sorcerers, and you already get 20% increased spell power with just 2 of them, and you get 45% when you have 4 of them. So you only need to slot 1 extra sorcerer in to get that 4, and you can have the Star Guardian active as well as a sorcery. It seems like this is going to be a match made in heaven. You get the mana, which is going to be really good, and you get the sorcery bonus, so they're all going to do way more damage, and probably this is going to be the mage comp of set 3. Next up we have our Valkyries, which is a pretty interesting concept, kind of like evolved from our Wardens really. So Valkyries take 50% or 75% reduced damage from melee basic attacks. The thing with Valkyries is they're not actually tanks. We have Kai'Sa as our 2 cost, KO as our 4 cost, and Misfortune as our 5 cost. These are all damage champions, so it basically means that if a tank or if a melee champion gets onto one of these, they're not going to shred through as much as they would right now. Like if a ranger gets hit by a melee unit like Olaf, they're pretty much dead. Last up in our origins, we have our Void Champions, and these are going to be the same as set 1, so Void Champions deal true damage. We only have 3 of them to start with. We have our Kha'Zix as a 1 cost, Vel'Koz as a 4 cost, and Cho'Gath as a 4 cost as well. The biggest difference between this version and the old version of Void is just going to be it's not that good for early game. Like you need 4 costs, 2 4 costs to actually make it work in the first place. You can't just stick out Kha'Zix, Kassadin, and Rek'Sai for a really good start. The other thing that makes it a bit easier as well is they're very different classes. Vel'Koz is a sorcerer, Kha'Zix is an infiltrator, and Cho'Gath is a brawler. So there is no way to really synergize between themselves. We're going to move into our classes now. So these will be an origin that we've already talked about paired with a class that we're going to talk about. We've talked about some of them already, but not properly. So infiltrators to start with gain 50% attack speed for the first 6 seconds of combat. Refresh on a takedown if you have 4 of them. Kha'Zix is one of these at 1 cost, Kai'Sa is a 2 cost, Shaco 3 cost, Fizz 4 cost, and Echo is a 5 cost. This is basically the evolution of our Shadow from last set. We have the attack speed instead of the increased damage, but you get it to start combat, and it's going to be refreshed if you have enough of them. Next up, we have our blasters. So every 5th blaster attack fires 2 or 4 additional attacks, which deal double damage. This is going to have some really disgusting synergy with items, so it's kind of like our ranger class from set 2. We have Graves at 1 cost, Lucian 2 cost, Ezreal is at 3 cost, Jinx is 4 cost, and Misfortune is 5 cost, and as you can tell, they are all pretty much AD carries. This can have some really good synergy with other stuff as well, especially stuff like Chrono, which is going to give you attack speed over the fight, kind of like the Luna buff at the moment, but Ezreal is one of those, so you're going to be able to slot him in, and maybe another one, maybe like a frontliner for example, and give all of these blasters attack speed. Next up, we have our Brawlers, which is actually the same as set 1. So Brawlers gain 250 health, there are 2 of them, and 750 health when you have 4 of them. We've got our Malphite here, which is a 1 cost, Blitzcrank 2 cost, Vi is going to be a 3 cost, and Cho'Gath is going to be a 4 cost. One of the biggest differences, and one of the good things about this, is they have no synergy between the 4 of them. Unlike in set 1, where you could kind of get multiple bonuses at the same time, this does not work that way at all. So you have to sacrifice something if you want to use these as your frontline. So next up, we have our Vanguards, which are actually our Wardens from set 2. They gain 70 or they gain 300 armor when you have 2 or 4 of them. Leona and Poppy are our 1 cost versions of our Vanguards. Mordekaiser is a 2 cost, Jace is a 3 cost, and Wukong is a 4 cost. Just like Wardens, you can get this active very early into the game, but one of the biggest differences between that and now in set 3 is that some of these champions are actually damage champions. They're not all just tanks. The first 2, like the Leona and Poppy you have, are pretty much just a frontline for early game, which is true, but then when you add in like a Jace and Wukong later, those will actually do a lot of damage, but they'll also be really hard to kill. Next up, we have our Mercenaries. We only have 2 of these, Gangplank and Misfortune, and they are both 5 costs, but this is really unique, so they can be paid gold to upgrade their abilities instead. This will definitely be like if you get into a late game situation where you're level 8 or level 9, you can actually dump some gold into these units to make them stronger rather than just kind of rolling for a few things. So it's a very late game thing. Next up, we have our Demolitionist. Out there, spells stun targets they hit for 2.5 seconds, and you only need 2 of these active. It's kind of like a Mystic version. It's like a supplemental thing. It's not really something you'll build your entire team around, but we have Ziggs as a 1 cost, Rumble as a 3 cost, and Gangplank as a 5. As you can imagine, when you have Gangplank and you have him, and if you upgrade his items with the Mercenary style, and then he's Demolitionist and stunning everyone as well, that's going to be pretty painful. Next up, we have one of our other tank classes. So Protectors gain a shield for 15% or 35% of their maximum health for 3 seconds whenever they cast. We have Jarvan as our 1 cost here, we have Rakan and Xin Zhao as our 2 cost, and we have Nico as our 3 cost. Mystic is actually returning in this set as well. Works pretty much the same. You get 40 or 120 magic resist for the team if you have 2 or 4 of them. We have Sona as our 2 cost here, Karma as our 3 cost, Soraka is a 4 cost, and Lulu is a 5 cost. You'll need it against stuff like our Sorcerers though, where all allies gain 20%, 45%, or 120% increased spell power. We have 1 cost Twisted Fate and Zoe. For this, we have 2 cost Annie and Ari, 3 cost Lux and Syndra, and a 4 cost Vel'Koz. There are 2 really big things here. One, we have no 5 cost Sorcerer, so you don't get like a Karthus or something like that and just pretty much win the game. Like, you're not going to get more powerful by getting a legendary with this buff. Saying that, all allies gain the increased spell power when you have this buff, so you can add in things like Aurelion Soul, like an Echo, like a Misfortune or Gangplank, another 5 costs from a different trait, and actually still get the buff and make them more powerful. Next up, we have Mana-Reaver. Now this is basically like a Hush, but as a class. So Mana-Reaver attacks have a 20% chance to mana lock the target for 1.5, 2, or 3 seconds. We have Darius here as a 2 cost Mana-Reaver. We have Kassadin as a 3 cost, Irelia as a 4 cost, and Thresh as a 5 cost. This is again kind of like a soft counter more than anything else. So if you're against a Sorcerer team or a very ultimate reliant team, then you can slot in Mana-Reavers and try to shut them down if you want to. Blade Masters are also making a return in set 3, but it's going to work a little bit differently. So there's a 25% or 50% chance on hit for Blade Masters to attack 2 extra times. It's also a lot easier to get online earlier. We have Xayah and Fiora, both 1 cost Blade Masters. We have Shen and Yasuo as a 2 cost. Master Yi is a 3 cost now. Irelia is a 4 cost, and so is Kayle. It will work a bit differently, and there is actually a spatula item for this as well, so maybe we're going to have some more blender comps rolled in, but it does work a little bit differently, so it shouldn't be as bad as it is now. We have 2 more classes. One of them I don't really count as a class too much. There's only 1 in there, but as snipers deal double damage to targets that are missing 500 health or more. Caitlyn is our 1 cost sniper, Ashe is our 3 cost, Jhin is our 4 cost. It's not probably something that you're going to build your entire comp around, but it's something that you will add in if you have these champions anyway to increase their damage. The last one, which I said doesn't really count as a class, is just Aurelion Soul, and he is a starship. So starships continuously circle the arena and cannot basic attack. It is basically the same thing as Singe from set 2, except he is going to circle the board rather than run in diagonals across it. Those are going to be all the origins and all the classes from set 3. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to check out all of the other information and everything about the champions down below. There was a lot of information, but hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in our next TFT video.